Welcome everyone to Break Knight Creative. I am Craven Knight and I'm back with another wrestling gear tutorial, and this time with some voiceover trying to explain some of the things that I do to create this particular set of gear. This gear is for a regular customer of mine, a wrestler named Adam Brooks. The design is very unique but similar to items that I've done for him in the past with the eyelet strap situation on the sides. He wanted to go for a different color scheme than this one, kind of a little bit more inverted, inspired by these sets of pants. Now you see me here rifling through my multiple patterns for wrestling trunks as I look for Adams. Here is the underlayer that I'm using, a shiny red spandex material that is going to be going on the underside of the black that I'm going to be using, which is a black kind of shiny snakeskin spandex material. Here I'm making big squares, just a little bit bigger than the pattern itself, so I can cut that size a little bit after. Here I'm using spray adhesive just a little bit just to layer these two materials on top of one another. So then I can cut out the specific pattern size. Now people have asked me about my patterns. The patterns literally for trunks for me are just 1/2 of the front is all I need to cut out the shape, because then for the back part, as you see here, I use a straight edge to cut from end to end for that leg hole, and then it all matches up, and that's all I need. No more than just that 1/2 of the front piece of the trunks. Here's the two laid out and it came out great. Now I'm going to be using the vinyl cutter. Here's the gold, red, and black vinyl that I'm going to be using, and just rely on that. I already have the design in my program and sized up, so now it's just a matter of just cutting it and weeding it to the colors that he wanted for this gear. The logo is the greatest ledge of all time, goat or gloat on the back there. And I've done it multiple times for him for different sets of gear. As you can hear in the background, which actually within the video, not in my VO, is the reason why I don't do these things. Weeding is a very satisfying part of the vinyl cutting process. Oh look, it's Pubert just hanging out. Now this is beginning to end of me just doing the heat press process after weeding out all the excess for the vinyl cut material. Putting the black background, which is the overall outline, which makes it easier to stitch, so I have to stitch all the specific details in there. So having the black on the black really helps with that, because the vinyl will stay on top of vinyl. And just making sure your orders are correct as far as applying the vinyl for this type of application, because you have to make sure you're not putting the piece that's supposed to be the last piece. You don't want to put that on first, pretty much. And I'm stitching here, reinforced stitching, because I do not want the vinyl to peel off from use of the gear. The sweat build up, the impact and washing, all that stuff will make a big difference. And there's it laid out, completely stitched, and that's the only logo that is being applied to this. Here you're going to see me pinning the sides, the hips, for this gear, and those are the only two parts I'm going to be stitching right now. So I do my regular seam stitch on the inside, and then on the outside I will do a straight stitch, a straight line top to bottom, so it has just a little bit more reinforcement, and then that flap on the inside doesn't interfere with anything. And you can see it looks really nice. And then I can apply everything on top of that. When it's laid out like this, it's very much easier to apply things to the side and try and keep things even. And here I am just sizing up a reference with my two straight edges to make the accent on the side. Now I was supposed to do gold, not red. So that's a mistake I ended up fixing off camera later on, but you'll see the finished product at the end of the video. But here I cut the red piece, and I want it to be wide at the top and smaller at the bottom, and then using a little bit of spray adhesive and then applying it. The spray adhesive is really great help to try and keep certain applications on before I stitch it, so I don't have to rely on pinning everything. Pinning can be very unreliable all the time unless you're actually stitching seams together. And here now I'm able to do the bottom part, which is the, I guess, the taint, the crotch seam at the bottom, and doing the same process I did for the sides. The seam stitch and then the straight stitch. And now I'm just applying the elastic for the leg holes and the waistband. Here I like to do the leg holes first. It's very quick to do, and I just kind of tug at it a little bit as I go, but not too much. Here I'm just sizing up how much I need for the waistband, the elastic. And then I go just a tiny bit smaller than what is on the trunks. That way it has to stretch a little bit. And then I stitch the two ends together using the pillow as an assistance to apply everything so it stays nice and firm and easier to pin everything together. And then I stitch the elastic and the ends and hem it and all that, stitch it all down. So that is all out of the way. I want to do this and get it out of the way so when I do apply the accents, there's no interference with stitching over the eyelets or thicker parts of the gear that I have to. Trunks is a very easy thing to kind of revisit certain portions of the gear to try and either remove or add things to. Now I'm doing the crotch accent, which a lot of wrestlers like to have on their gear. I already have a pattern made up for it, which I'm thinking of revisiting, but I'm doing the gold accent for it and having a stiff material that doesn't have any stretch at all, so when I apply the eyelets, they're less likely to come off. And I just draw on the back material. This is a material that is going to not be seen at all, and just drawing the shape. Sometimes I'll draw on the fabric, or I'll just use the pattern and go over the edge with it. And just making my reference points for when I'm going to hammer out the holes and reinforce stitching the edges so the inside part doesn't end up like peeling off of that black part. Now I'm doing the eyelets here, and I'm creating the holes here so I can do the eyelets and hammer those down so those can stay in. That's why I rely on the stiffer material for this. Now just a little bit of spray adhesive on the edges because I don't want this completely try and stay on. It's really, I just need to, I don't want it to stay on the gear permanently. I just want it to stay on just so I can stitch it. And adding a little bit of red for the accent so that's on the inside to kind of just break things up a little bit. And here I'm doing the belt loops. I use just a non-stretch material on the inside, so it's just so I have a reference to kind of fold everything over each other. And I go about 18 inches at most to try and make 3 separate pieces, about 3 inches a piece. So I make one long piece and then I cut my pieces. But the stitching mainly just keeps the folds together so it doesn't fall apart. Always make sure that part that is folded, that edge that is folded over, is on the inside that gets folded over. And I'm stitching these two, so it's a straight stitch to get those on there, fold over, and then another straight stitch over that. So inside and then on the outside. Here I'm making a little bit of a pattern for the croc skin vinyl that I'm going to be using for those eyelet side accents that I'm going to be creating. This vinyl is a very stiff material as well, no stretch, no give, so when I apply the eyelets, I know for sure it's not going to go anywhere. And every inch I am applying like a little dot as a reference for where I'm going to make these holes to apply the eyelets for these accent pieces. Out of everything, this is the longest, one of the longest and more tedious parts of doing it, but is actually very satisfying when you see it all come together. And I did spray a little bit of spray adhesive just to keep these on there so I don't have to rely on pinning it so much. But like I said, I did use the wrong color for the side here. It's supposed to be gold, not red. Off camera, I end up applying a gold strip to there, but I did have to remove these accent pieces in order to do that. Now I have stitched those down, so now they're all good. Now it's just a matter of creating the belt. Here I cut a piece about 1.5 inches thick and about the length of the the waist size that was given to me for this, and using spray adhesive to fold everything over to make a solid color. Fold everything over, and then I create the accent part, which is going to be gold. This is a nice shiny gold that I got from one of my online sources that I get materials from, and I just make an inch wide strip and put that on. I know this is just the way I'm still trying to figure out how to make belts. I've gone using elastic for this to using stiffer material. Now I just rely on something that has no stretch. Now providing the eyelets for the edges, each end, just 2 for this specific belt. I am pulling the materials away from each other so I can now cut the rips for the accent, which is something he's done for all the gear that he's had me do. It can be kind of a pain depending on how much spray adhesive I use, because I use spray adhesive on one side so it doesn't try to stick permanently. But if I use too much, it's going to be harder to pull the black off of the red. So I just really don't want to cut the red material at all. I got to be very careful not to do that. And here I'm just applying the paracord for the accent on the front, and then the separate paracord for the belt loop. For the belt itself. And there it is, all finished. And like I said, I did the gold. I was supposed to do the gold instead of red, but you'll see the images here in a second. But it did come out really great. He loves it. He always loves the items that I make for him. I regularly make him knee pads, putting loose ledge on the knee pads and all that. And I'm just really happy to have a regular happy customer that trusts me enough to pay me to make really cool items like this. And there is the actual finished product after I applied the gold. And it came out great. It looks beautiful. It's great material. It's one of my favorite pieces that I make. So I want to thank you for watching and being patient with me with getting these videos out. With getting a lot of orders with wrestling gear, it's really hard to bang these out, but I'm doing what I can with the limited time that I have. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me Break Knyte Creative on Instagram or on Facebook and see all the items that I'm putting out there. Stay tuned to see what other videos I put out. I'm also going to be putting out some wrestling content too, as I'm wrestling consistently as well, which has been a lot of fun. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys. Stay creative. Peace, love, and chicken grease. I'll see you next time. Later.